Buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving into some serious breaking news out of the Middle East. Just in the last 24 hours, Iran has essentially slammed the door on the Straits of Hormuz, at least partially, with live fire drills by their IRGC Navy, temporary closures, bold claim of 24/7 surveillance. So if you followed the channel for a while, we've talked about this being one of their chess moves that leads them down this road that they just can't take this back. It's like saying the F word in church. You can't take this back once you start shutting down the flow of oil to the rest of the world, where a fifth of the world's oil flows through. You're basically telling the whole world, we are going to control your oil. And this is moving things to level 11. Here's some of the latest breaking news as well coming out of Iran with some bold claims. So I'll just say that. So Khamenei, the Ayatollah of Iran, has said that the US will not succeed in destroying Iran. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, in one of his recent speeches, said that America has not succeeded in destroying the Islamic Republic for 47 years, and this time they will not succeed either. More headlines here. Iran partially closed the Straits of Hormuz, a vital oil checkpoint, as U.S. talks underway. So as you can see, Iran is basically trying to strong arm some of these talks, doing some of the things that they typically wouldn't do unless there was a conflict kicking off, because they're feeling the heat. Obviously, they're feeling like something's about to go down, which is why they're just stepping up and they're trying to match and ramp up to show the U.S. strength. That's kind of what we're seeing out of Iran right now. Not only show the U.S. strength, but show the U.S. that they're really good at talking trash. It's like that guy in the basketball game that can never make a basket, but just talks trash every single day. And you just have this weird feeling that he's always trying to steal your girlfriend. Anybody ever had that before? But we're talking potential oil price spikes, risks of accidental clashes, if even before the actual conflict goes down. There could be accidental clashes, more of those, because again, when you get the IRGC Navy out there, you've got these Wild West IRGC naval operators that are out there trying to shut down the Straits, maybe partially shut it down, maybe partially mine it, and you've just got a wild card, because at that point, you don't know what one of them is going to do. One of them decides, oh, we're actually going to launch 10 of these drones off of our boat, or hey, we've got a NOR anti-ship missile, we're just going to test this out and try launching this off of one of our ships. And then what I would call the trash talking out of Iran would be coercive diplomacy, because Iran at this point is trying to show strength. It's like the person that knows they've never lifted legs, but they're trying to enter a squat competition. So they're going to start talking a bunch of trash about, yeah, you know, I do a ton of leg curls, so the leg curls are going to help me out here. So it's just escalation, and it's escalation happening fast. So stick around to the very end, because we're going to break down the Straits of Hormuz importance, what Iran's naval muscle is and what they've been doing with these live fire exercises, the shock factors that they're trying to create. And it looks like at this point, Iran could just snap their fingers and try to fully permanently close the Straits, at least until it's opened up, and what would open that up? Well, a lot of different systems would open that up, from the US military, the US Navy, the US Air Force, and we'll get into all those as well. So first things first, the Straits of Hormuz, why does it matter? What is it? It's a narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. It stretches about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. That's tiny. So think about the gates in the movie 300. Everything gets pinched down to that one little spot. This is the lifeline for global energy. Around 20% of the world's oil trade, that's over 21 million barrels a day, flows through here from exporters like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and the UAE. Iran controls the northern side, Oman the southern side, making it a classic choke point. Disruptions here could send oil prices skyrocketing, and actually in a historic closure, partially closing it for live fire drills. So at this point, it's like someone's playing with fire, and it happens to be Iran, and someone's potentially going to get their face melted off. So let's talk about the big player here, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, IRGC Navy, for you acronym lovers. These guys aren't your standard Navy. They're an asymmetric warfare fleet that is based on hybrid warfare tactics. They're built for swarming tactics in confined waters like the Straits of Hormuz, and in the last 24 hours, they launched what was called Smart Control of Hormuz Straits drills. So they didn't exactly get creative on the name of it, but basically it was firing live missiles, deploying drones and subs for constant surveillance, and even unveiling new underwater missile tunnels, is what they're called. Rear Admiral Tangzir boasted 24-hour watch with cruise missiles that can reach 620 miles. So massive range on that. Iran's been building these up for years. They've got fast attack boats that are armed with anti-ship missiles, midget subs, and a horde of drones. Their strategy: overwhelm bigger navies like the US with sheer numbers and speed. So think 50-mile-per-hour boats zipping in, trying to smash into the carriers and destroyers themselves. This buildup ties into their A2AD, anti-access aerial denial network, making the Straits a no-go zone for adversaries in their mind. This isn't just posturing, it's a real capability jump for them, and them actually closing it is definitely making the world a little bit nervous. But check this out. This is something that Iran might not know is out there, could be lurking in the depths. I'm going to do a full video on this, but this is lamprey. It's Lockheed Martin's undersea parasite that latches on and waits. So this undersea device can latch onto ships, sneak into restricted areas and recharge. It can also launch drones, torpedoes, or decoys, or it can just chill on the ocean floor and wait for a tasking. It can surface and then launch drones. So this system might be Iran's worst nightmare in the Straits of Hormuz. Again, I'll do a full breakdown on this, but very interesting that this is coming out now as the Straits of Hormuz are basically being slammed shut by Iran. But what are some of the repercussions? So oil prices are already up about 3% in the last 24 hours, and a full closure could double that overnight, hammering economies around the world. Second, the IRGC's 24/7 surveillance means that any ships in Hormuz is a potential target. That's kind of what they're saying. We're there 24/7. We'll take down any ship we want. That's what they're flexing at this point. And it's pretty clear at this point that their uranium enrichment is at a near weapons grade level, raising stakes incredibly high at this point. President Trump has said that major retaliation would happen, and with all the metal, all the different naval assets and air assets in the region, it looks like he's backing up that talk with actual kinetic options. But this tension's building faster than your ex's anger when they see that you're actually dating someone successfully. But diving deeper into these nuclear talks, these are indirect negotiations that are mediated, and they're meant to revive the 2015 JCPOA, at least in part. That's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which capped Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But Iran ditched those limits after the US pulled out in 2018, now saying to be enriching uranium to a 60% purity level that's relatively close to bomb grade. The second round of these talks started February 16th. It was focused on sanctions lifting versus them curbing their nuclear program. US envoys are pushing for maximum pressure while Iran demands immediate relief. No deals have come yet, and then Khamenei is vowing resilience. He's basically saying that the US cannot take down the Iranian regime. Trump seems to be indirectly involved, linking this to broader pressures. Failure here could greenlight the military option. So if the talks fail, here's what likely would go down. It would be a swift and muscular response, basically. Trump has deployed that second aircraft carrier to the region, ramping up patrols, again, 24/7 flight operations capable. The USS Abraham Lincoln F-35s and F-18s, USS Ford F-18s, but also a lot of F-18 Growlers, which are massive electronic attack aircraft. But having those two carriers in the region gives the ability for 24/7 flight operations. So it's like, okay, Iran, you're going to have 24/7 surveillance of the Straits. Well, we're going to have 24/7 operation of fighter jets up above, ready to do whatever we need them to do. And President Trump has called the drills provocative, hinting at countermeasures if the talks fail. This builds on the maximum pressure of the sanctions and of the military presence, with a lot of allies around the world. Europe, Israel are all watching very closely to see what happens with these talks. But the envoys that have gone and done the talks last week have said that a nuclear deal with Iran is basically impossible at this point. So we'll see what happens with these talks, but with Iran ramping up the pressure, seems very interesting. It's basically like Iran is saying at this point, we just want to F around and find out. That's something we want to do. That's fun to us. But when the Ayatollah is sitting in his golden palace with nobody telling him that the emperor doesn't have any clothes on, to me, that's what's happening. That's why the rhetoric is ramping up so high, because he knows he has all these proxies. He has close to 2,000 ballistic missiles. So yeah, he does have some tricks up his sleeve, but at the end of the day, it looks like to me he's not really aware, or he doesn't really care that he's up against this massive force from the US military. Because for him, he thinks he's a god, right? So it's probably pretty hard for him to understand that the US military, the US Navy, the US Air Force could bring down force beyond his wildest imagination and basically show him that he's a man. He doesn't understand that yet, But in my opinion, it looks like if this goes down, that's exactly what he's going to learn. And the playbook would start with electronic warfare to jam different radars, the EA-18G Growler going in, doing a ton of jamming to suppress the enemy's air defenses. That's called SEED. And then the carriers would launch waves of those Hornets that would be armed with HARMs to take out the missile sites. Drones like MQ-9s would be up above providing ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, while subs would be firing Tomahawks from far away. The key here would be overwhelm the swarm of Iran in reverse. So they're going to try to swarm the different naval assets. They're going to try to swarm the bases with missiles. So then you have to counter that with a swarm of your own. Overwhelming force of Tomahawk missiles and Strikers, F-18s going in and crushing the Iranian regime. Speed would be crucial, and the F-18 is perfectly paired for that. Speed's over supersonic, and then you team that up with advanced drones like the Anduril Fury, the AI X-Bat, and that would really give you the ability to counter that swarm of Iran with a swarm of the US Navy and Air Force. F-35Cs would bring the stealth. Who knows? Iran could even blast off F-14s if they got a little handsy, they got a little ballsy, and they launched those F-14s. You'd have F-18s up there to counter them, and you'd have F-15Es that are in theater right now at Jordan, loaded down with AMRAAMs and anti-drone rockets. So you've got a ton of capability to take on those different assets. So let's move to a section I like to call 4D chess. So the rhetoric has obviously fired up to the fieriest level we have seen so far. Supreme Leader Khamenei is straight up vowing that the Islamic Republic will not buckle under US pressure, calling President Trump's threats empty and predicting failure for any attempts to destroy Iran, and calling President Trump a criminal at this point while the negotiations are happening. That's a very interesting negotiation strategy there. Where did you learn how to negotiate? Oh, the Ayatollah School of Negotiation. It's basically just a whole bunch of red buttons that you just hit and it launches missiles. Oh, let's negotiate this way. Let's negotiate this way. Well, why are they being so bold? Well, they've got leverage, alliances with Russia and China. They believe they'll provide them backup. Likely China has also dropped off dozens of anti-aircraft radars that they claim can spot stealth assets. That's what China is doing to try to help Iran. So they feel a little emboldened by that. And then the proxy networks in Yemen, Syria, their goal is to stretch US resources thin and use those asymmetric threats like missiles, drones, and try to overwhelm US forces. So yeah, they actually have a lot of things in their Rolodex to try to take on the US military. Now, in my opinion, the US military is going to crush them on a level they have never ever felt before, but this is a very tough tactical problem. But again, you're negotiating with people who have gone back on agreements for years, and you're negotiating with people who have killed 30,000 of their own people. So this just shows the level that they're willing to go to. I mean, you can't trust anything Iran says, in my opinion. I mean, you're basically dealing just with a murderous regime who's willing to just strike down 30,000 protesters. That's how they solve things. So going into negotiations, there's probably, in my opinion, never going to be a time of actual good faith negotiation that happens during these talks. So what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with this hypothetical scenario should things get kinetic. So what we would likely see would be swarms launching out of Iran and then activating their proxy networks. And they are said to have death squads around the world, like teams of 10 to 20 men that will go in and just cause mayhem in different cities around the globe. So that would need to be countered, which they've been basically threatening the world with that for years. So countering that would be a part of this puzzle. Countering the proxies would be a part of this puzzle. And then shooting down the missiles that Iran is going to launch would be a massive part of this puzzle as well, which having the submarines, the Tomahawks, the destroyers launching SM-6s against those advanced missiles would be huge. And then you've got the air wings on the different carriers. Those would be up there just ready to play whack-a-mole with the different aircraft, with the different drones that Iran would launch. And every single fighter pilot would be up there just begging Iran to launch one of their F-14s so they'd get a chance at splashing one of those with an AMRAAM. At this point, escalation has hit a whole new level because Iran is going to try to strike down naval assets. That's going to be their number one goal. The US is going to retaliate, and they're going to strike key sites should this go kinetic, should this conflict go down. I would look for massive jumps in oil. Global markets will likely be rattled for a while should this happen. But in my opinion, if the Iranian regime is finally rooted out, the global markets will bounce back, knowing that they don't have this crazy guy, Iran, holding a revolver to the world's head in the Straits of Hormuz. So what do you think happens from here? We covered that partial closure of the Straits of Hormuz, basically escalating to a level that we haven't seen yet. So what comes next? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Would love to hear what you think. Go ahead and follow me on X, follow me on Instagram. I'm posting there pretty much every day. Also, join the Max Ready Room if you'd like to see a live from me every week. I'll see you on that live, and then I'll see you on this next video that pops up right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.